The presenting sponsor of Moon Tower Soccer is FVF Law.
To find out what makes FVF a different kind of injury law firm, you can visit fvf.law.
Hello friends, thanks for listening to Moon Tower Soccer. This week we will preview the final match of the season against Colorado Rapids, and we'll do that preview with Tony Husband from Apple TV. We'll also cover some other Austin FC news and talk a little bit about the men's national team playing at Q2 Stadium. My name is Landon Cottam, and I'm joined, as always, by Mr. Jeremiah Bentley.
Hey, everybody. I'm Jeremiah Bentley. And Landon, I think this weekend was one where we both took advantage of some of the unique Austin opportunities that were out there. Mine being that Jackson Bentley had never been to ACL, so we did our first ACL day. We decided we would start with a day and not a whole weekend, so we went.
What did you think?
We went yesterday. We had a great time. Sturgill Simpson is his favorite artist, and Sturgill was closing last night, so it was great. But it was also 100 degrees and dusty, and so I'm not feeling like my best and happiest self now. We had a great time. We will definitely do it again. I don't know if you've seen any of the the Chapel Roan shots of the insanity of her crowd.
It gave me anxiety looking at those aerial shots of the crowd there. This is why I can't go to ACL anymore, is because I can't deal with that kind of crowd. Yeah,
we were there for like 2 songs and then decided that we could mark off the I've seen Chapel Roan from very far away play live. Check on the list, and also it was very anxiety-inducing and hectic because it was so crowded, and we went all the way on the far end of the other stage, and I'm the other end of the park, and I'm gonna reinforce this by not remembering his name, but there was some other poor guy, the other guy on the main stage at the end that was just I'm so happy that my friends and family are here, while everybody else is at the Chapel Roan on the far end. So we watched. I think his name was Mike. He was kind of a country guy or whatever, but he was just. It was not chaotic, and it was live music, and that's all we look for at the moment. So that was our Sunday. So we had a good time. We'll go back next year. I'm going to hope it's not 100 degrees, but definitely a festival experience worth having. And then I know you went to the national team game on Saturday night. So maybe talk about the crowd on Saturday night, and then it was just observations of the game itself.
Yeah, we were supposed to be out of town, and we're going to meet up with my brother and his wife in Houston and just have a little weekend off. And their baby got sick, so all plans got canceled. I was like, oh, what are we going to do in Austin now? I was like, oh, this game's happening. Let's go buy tickets. So bought tickets to the game. Mauricio Pochettino's first game in charge. And yeah, we were talking a little bit off air, not being sure what this crowd was going to look like. And it ended up being quite good. I think I saw Stephen Goff or someone report earlier in the week that they had sold 18,000 tickets. This was Wednesday or Thursday. And then they announced the attendance. It wasn't the sellout number, but it was not
2738, but it was 20 something. Was it 20,730?
Yeah, 20,300 something. Yeah. So not far off. It was not full, but it was pretty full, if that makes sense. And then the vibes were good. People are excited to see what this team looks like under a new coach. Not all of the stars on the team were there, but quite a few were. And so I think that probably drove some attention as well. As far as performance goes, it wasn't a great performance. And I got into this in a group chat with some folks, probably a performance that Berhalter would have been, people would have been pretty angry at Berhalter about, but because it's a new guy, and I will say there's enough little differences that it's okay, this could grow into something else that I think overall coming out of it optimistic, not super, super optimistic about this team, but more optimistic than I was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago or whatever.
Yeah, so was there anybody that stood out maybe that you weren't expecting as much? I know Yunus Musa was that his first goal for the U.S. national team? Is that right?
Yeah, probably. I'm not sure, but Yunus Musa playing as a wingback. I love Aiden Morris was one of my favorite MLS players. Here we go swooning over Columbus Crew again, but Aiden Morris was one of my favorite MLS players when he was at his peak in MLS. He's over in the English Championship now, and I was very curious to see how his game would kind of translate to a higher level. He did fine. I don't think he did anything to say oh, he's the starter now, but I think if he keeps putting in performances like this, he might be able to say okay, I'm going to be on the World Cup roster. But other than that, I don't know that anybody else really shown too much. Pepe continues his Q2 scoring streak, so maybe we should just play every game at Q2 and let Pepe play 90 in those games.
Well, I know a certain team that plays at Q2 a lot is short strikers. So, I kind of have a solution to that. Like, bring Pepe back. Boy, a lot of people would have to change their very strong takes on Ricardo Pepe if that was to happen at some point in the future.
I don't think it'd take much convincing.
You don't think so? A couple goals?
Not if he keeps scoring goals, no.
No. All right. Well, you texted me earlier this, I guess, week or last week. I guess it was last week now, that you had a game and it was going to be fun, but you couldn't tell me anything about it. So this seems like the right time to transition into this. So I will learn the rules and point of this game at the exact same time that the people are listening to.
Yeah, so we're in the time of the year, and we'll continue being in the time of the year for the next few months, where on a given week, we might not know if we have any prominent news to cover. And so I have now gotten to the habit of making a list of little games or segments we can have in our pockets to roll out on weeks where not much news happened. This is one of those weeks, so we're going to have a little game again. This one is spawned on by Sebastian Driussi scoring his 50th Austin FC goal. And so I was just going to try to see if you could guess the other top 10 Austin FC goal scorers without looking it up. So if you have any tabs open, please close them. So not necessarily in order, just I don't think this will be that hard naming the top 10, but yeah, try to guess number 2. I bet you can.
10. I'm going to go with Diego
Fagundez. And this is all competition. So Driussi's at 50. Diego Fagundez in second place at 17.
Wow. I mean, yeah, we talked with Tony about this, about Driussi's magical year in 2022. But so because almost all of Diego's goals maybe came also in the same season because he was not very productive at 23.
I think he had 7 goals in 21. Him and I'm not going to say him and someone else tied for the most goals in 21.
Okay, I was going to guess that someone else is somebody on the list. I don't think he's third, but Cecilio Dominguez.
Cecilio Dominguez is tied for 8th place.
Okay,
with 9 goals. So he had 7 in 21 and then 2 in 2022 before he was removed from the team.
Okay. Alex Ring being one of those.
That's right. Alex Ring is number 3 with 13 goals in all comps.
Wow.
I'll give you a hint and say
quick.
For number 4, it's a 3-way tie.
Okay, I want John Gallagher is gonna be one of those. I think
that's one of them.
Well, now it's getting kind of scary. Is Obrian? He's not one of those guys, but is Obrian on the list somewhere already?
Obrian is on the list at number 10.
Okay. So now I have just.
I'll give you a hint here. The guys tied with Gallagher are ones you would expect.
Oh, ones I would expect?
Yeah.
How about Thomas Pochettino?
No.
No? And not there at all?
Not there at all.
How about Giassi Zardes?
Nope.
No. Oh, now I feel really bad. It's like
think of people who played in the attack in years where we scored goals. Who was the striker that year?
Danny Houston wasn't the striker that year, right?
I don't think he ever even really played.
Yeah. Is this bad? I can't remember who our striker was in 2022. I feel like it is.
Yes, especially given that his voice plays at the end of every episode of this show.
Oh my God, Maxi.
Think for nothing, you never.
Yeah, Maxi Urruti is one of them. The other one, also an attacker. Another hint, still currently on the team.
Oh, another attacker still on the team. Ethan Finley. All of them at 11. Okay.
You said Giassi Zardes. He is in 7th place because of the 4-way tie with 10 goals. You said Dominguez, who is tied for 8th place with 9 goals. Who is tied with Dominguez?
Rigoni.
No.
Oh. Well,
on this one, think longevity, not a lot of amount.
I mean, 9 goals longevity-wise is like not that much either.
But I'm saying like player profile, longevity, not like a high amount in a single season. Also, still currently on the team.
Rubio.
Nope. Longevity.
Well, Rubio's played a long time.
No, in this team though.
Oh, on this team. Well, it's not Hector.
It is a defender.
Julio
Cascante.
Oh my
9
gosh.
goals.
Wow.
So that's the top 10. Obrian is number 10. So it's Driussi, Fagundes, Ring, Urruti, Finley, Gallagher, Zardes, Dominguez, Cascante, Obrian, and then number 11 with 6 goals, 3 of them in one game.
Oh, the great Musajite.
There you go.
Wow. This is true. I'm going to do terrible at that sporkle that somebody puts out at the end of every year, name every Austin FC player.
Yeah, I mean, like, how do we feel? It's like with the high number that Driussi has, it feels bad to look at the very low numbers that everyone else has. But it's still a young team. A lot of these guys did not play here for multiple seasons. And so I think it says more about like the output of our high-end players and the inability to like sign guys who are going to stick around and be productive long-term than it does about many of these other guys. Because these other guys, it's like, it's about where you'd expect them to be. It's the fact that we haven't signed anyone else that could beat any of them.
Right. I think about, going back to before the first season when we were doing this show and we're like, where are the goals going to come from? And it's kind of always been the case. And it kind of touches on the whole, maybe one of the most damning things of the whole Josh Wolf era is like, it's okay to lose and be entertaining at some level, but like not scoring any goals and losing a lot, it like tends to wear your average fan out. And so I'm not surprised by the outcome of that, sort of given those factors.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's take a quick break. We're going to come back and cover some Austin FC news, and then we'll be joined by Tony Husband to preview the last match of the season and also just talk about some big picture Austin FC stuff. Hang tight. We'll be right back.
When no one is around.
Moontower Soccer is brought to you by our friends at FEF Law, the official injury lawyers of Austin FC.
FEF is a different kind of personal injury law firm dedicated to community transparency and client education. And they have their own podcast called Summary Judgment that you can check out wherever you get your podcasts.
You can go to FEF.law to find out what makes FEF a different kind of injury law firm and why understanding your legal options can dramatically change the outcome of a case. Once again, that's FEF.law. Amplify Credit Union is a member-owned financial cooperative that served the needs of Central Texans for over 5 decades. As a credit union, Amplify has no shareholders or parent companies. That means more of your money stays in the community.
Amplify has been the home of fee-free banking since 2022. Their free checking accounts come with 0 overdraft fees or minimum balances. That means Amplify's fee-free checking account helps you get more mileage from your everyday spending.
Amplify membership is open to any Texas resident. Learn to trust your bank again at Amplify Credit Union. To learn more and to register for free parking at the Amplify Esperanza branch on game day, go to www.goamplify.com/moontower-soccer. All right, we are back. Let's jump into the news of the week. So there's a lot of discussion on last week's show about the Guilherme Biro foul in the LA Galaxy game. Also the Marky Delgado foul. We got some updates on that after we published the last show.
We did, and I feel like every Austin FC fan feels totally vindicated, and the LA side of things feels not quite so much. But so yeah, Delgado. So the I don't remember what day of the week this comes out, but every week MLS publishes a disciplinary report where they talk about who's been fined or suspended based upon results of the past week. It's usually also when they'll update who's out for things like card accumulation and all the warnings. So we got that news after the match last week. So Delgado picks up a fine and an additional suspension. Well, a suspension of 1 game because it was only yellow, so he didn't get suspended.
Essentially saying, like, we messed up. That should have
been red. Yeah.
Which is what we were all saying.
Yeah. And, it doesn't ultimately matter in the grand scheme of things, but there's a very different game, obviously, if Delgado picks up a red card at the point in time he did in the game state they're in with a tackle on win the tackle on Bukhari, although maybe now we're previewing a match that still has no purpose. No, wait, it wouldn't have mattered anyhow because the other results. And then Gary Biro picked up a fine for his red card, but did not pick up an additional suspension because you remember a lot of the immediate aftermath is like, oh, he's going to be out for a long time, which is true because he's going to be out till February, but like he's not going to miss any other MLS matches.
But the fine was for failing to leave the field.
Right.
It was not for the tackle, which again, even more so vindicates our views on it and a lot of Austin fans' views on like the difference in these two tackles. They gave Delgado a fine for the tackle. They gave Biro a fine for what happened afterwards and failing to leave the field in a timely manner. So that kind of puts it into context there. And then there was a bunch of other fines for Austin FC players as well, right?
Which, I don't even think I even named the players. It's just like mass conduct violations in the both 60th and 90th. Mass confrontation, violations in both the 60th and 90th for several players on both Austin and LA Galaxy, which I think nobody is going to be surprised by given the way that, especially the end of the game confrontation.
Yeah. What else we got? We've got end of year awards. Austin FC had some players nominated to the MLS year end awards, but once you look at the list, it feels a little hollow, doesn't it?
It does. Well, I mean, even when you read the Austin FC players, because at first you're like 5 players listed as nominees for various honors. It seems like a lot, but then when you read into the 5 players, and the other players on those, the number of other players on those like that are nominated, it's like, oh, okay, cool. It's like everybody.
I think
gets
there were
one.
like 18 goalkeepers nominated for goalkeeper of the year, and then like I don't know, 20 or 30 players for newcomer of the year. So I guess like go through the list of the players, and we'll talk about the ones who we think are actually highest on those lists.
It's the old Major League Baseball rule where like everybody gets one person who's an all-star, basically.
That's what it feels like, yeah.
All right, so we got Brad Stuver, MLS Goalkeeper of the Year. That one seems solid. He's not going to win it because Austin's doing Austin.
But he deserves a shout in that one, right?
Absolutely.
He's top 5 on pretty much everybody's list.
Yep, for sure. Then Owen Wolf, MLS Young Player of the Year.
Again,
given the other news that we get,
very deserved. They actually already did the voting on 22 under 22, and Owen I think was listed number 17. I was looking at the other players on that list. It feels like a fair slotting for him. I think he was in the 20s last year. All the players above him start as much as he does, and if not more, and then seem to have like bigger impacts on their team than he does. So I think that's fair, but it is worth pointing out, Owen is eligible for this award for 2 more seasons. And so, like, I would not be shocked to see him rise up that list year after year.
Yeah, I think to the point that you made about the goal scorers, the fact that Owen's the only player on this list and ends up where he does, it's like not an indictment of Owen. It's the fact that Austin has not developed any other young talent. Like I was looking, LA has 2 or 3 guys. Galaxy has 2 or 3 players on the list, and that's what you would want. But like Owen's doing great and deserves all the recognition he gets. It'd be better if he had more help. So then we give me Bidru, newcomer of the year. Like I love him. I don't know about him being. I guess I don't remember how long the list was, but he's one of the 25 best. Sure. On
a list this long, he deserves to be on the list, but he's not going to be in the top 10.
Okay, Brendan Heinzike, defender of the year. This seems like a
same. Yeah,
sure.
On a 25-man short list, sure, throw him on there.
Yeah. And then Hector Jimenez, Audi Goals Drive Progress Impact Award. I don't know what the exact qualifications for this award are, but Hector seems like an all-around good dude. So it seems like the kind of list he would end up on.
Yeah. Was that all of them?
That's the 5.
Yeah,
Stuver,
I mean,
Wolf, Biederer, Heinzike, and Hector. Yeah.
It seems like, Stuver's the one who, like, on a proper short list of 5 names, he's the only one of any of these people who is going to be in that final running. So yeah, grain of salt here, but it is cool to see guys get recognized, especially the ones who like seem to actually be in the upper echelon of these categories. Let's move on to national team outings. I think we still have some games going on after publishing.
Correct.
But we do have some
there's like
stuff
3 tomorrow,
in
right?
the books.
Yeah. So we'll start with Ukraine because I think they're done. So Svatak is a late sub in the 1-0 winner over Georgia. unused sub in the 1-1 draw versus Czechia. When I say late sub, I mean like 90th minute sub. So he did not do enough. Yeah. So he didn't do enough to necessarily even get a rating. Julio Cascante was an unused sub in their 1-1 draw versus Suriname. He has a game coming up. So Venezuela tied Argentina, and this was, I think, Messi's first match back in quite a while. I didn't see Danny even making the bench, if I saw this right.
Yeah, they called in a pretty big squad, and there was 4 or 5 players that they called in that did not make the bench. And apparently, like, Venezuela Twitter was pretty upset about Danny specifically not even being on the bench. So do they have another game coming up?
So I think the games that we have coming up tomorrow, and this is credit We Are Austin TV's Twitter account for me reading this.
Yeah, Costa Rica and Venezuela are both tomorrow night on Tuesday night.
Yeah, and Uganda I think plays tomorrow also, but in the morning.
Okay.
We didn't talk about Bobo, but he's also a player on a national team.
Anyway, like not a ton of action from our boys with their national teams. I mean, I guess one of the positives is that Swatak will come back fresh and hopefully be able to start and play most, if not all, of this game on Saturday, which I think that's one of the things that we have to look forward to, right? Is seeing some of these new guys just play together more. So hopefully he can come back and be a contributor in this game. Cascante the same. I'm not sure if he'll even be a starter. Like, it's not a guarantee anymore, right? With Swatak in the team. But then Danny is suspended anyway. So he might as well get some run out and actually play. So hopefully he gets to play tomorrow.
Yeah, let's go on to the coaching position. So we got one piece of news, which was that Gregor Berhalter got hired by Chicago Fire. I know a lot of Austin fans who were worried about repeating the Josh Wolf experience in playing style with Greg Berhalter. Were worried about that, but like everything, I think that most people who know anything have heard, and Tony Husband touched. Well, actually, that was off air. We did
talk a little bit about this with Tony after we finished our interview, but saying like these, like Berhalter, Arena, Bradley, like these institution U.S. soccer coaches that which didn't really feel like Burrell's going to be interested in any of them. Like the Precourt connection always made Berhalter a realistic option, but all the reports coming out were saying Berhalter wants to have the same role he did in Columbus, where he's like sporting director and coach. And I don't like that setup in MLS in the modern day anyway. And B, I don't think Burrell would have ever gone for that. So I think for those reasons, he was never going to be a realistic hire. I'll still say, like, people saying like, oh, the poor Fire, like the Fire have been a flaming trash heap as far as like the competence in their front office for many, many years. Many, many, many years. Berhalter is going to be such an upgrade on anything that they've had for so long that like there's a few reasons I didn't want him to come here, didn't think he would come here. I think it's a pretty good hiring for Chicago and would not be surprised to see him do quite well in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I would say my concerns about him succeeding in Chicago are not Greg Berhalter, right? It's like where they really are interested and serious about being better as an organization is really what that comes down to, more than anything that like Greg is going to do or not do. So we did get Davy Arnaud, which kind of we touched on this a little bit last week. So he's the interim. He's been on the sidelines for Austin FC twice, both in 2022. One was when I think Josh had COVID against a draw against FC Dallas. The other one was like, I forgot that Josh picked up a yellow card accumulation against Colorado. So he's got 2 draws. Davey, I didn't remember this until I read Phil West's article about him. Native Texan who grew up in Nederland and played college soccer in Texas.
At West Texas A&M, which is where, I think I've said this on the show before, but it was a long time ago. I grew up in the Panhandle. A lot of, like, most of my friends from high school ended up going to school at West Texas A&M. And I moved to Lubbock and went to South Plains College, where I did like a studio recording degree and then transferred to Texas Tech. And so I lived in Lubbock all of my friends from high school lived in Canyon at West Texas A&M. And so I would go up to Canyon like every other weekend and go to football games and like hang out with my friends my freshman year. And it got to a point where I knew West Texas A&M's fight song and then realized I did not know my own school's mascot.
I was waiting for you. So you're going to break into West Texas A&M's fight song? That's really what I was looking for. A little bit
on Buffaloes, we arrived for the fight tonight. So there's some football talk in the next line.
That's pretty good.
WTAM, WTAM, fight. That's all I remember.
Beautiful. It's beautiful.
I think I know. Okay, South Plains College's mascot is the Texans. Do not even know if they have a fight song.
Oh, well, but you're there a little bit after Davy Arnaud, though, for sure.
Yeah.
And Davy's, I guess in 2019, he was in this same situation in Houston, but he got the final 9 matches. So definitely a different situation in this last one in Austin. He's still a guy that's looking to be a head coach at some point in this league. I don't know if one game's going to be his chance to show the world what he's made of, but like, what do you kind of expect to see from Arnaud, if anything different from what we've seen from Josh Wolf to date?
Yeah, a lot of times in like these interim positions, like these guys want to put their stamp on the game, show what they can do. But like you said, in a single game, like what are you actually going to achieve, or what can you actually show that you're doing differently? For that reason, like I don't expect it to be that much differently. I went back and tried to find some articles from when he took over for those 9 games in Houston. And he specifically said in an interview there, like, we're not going to change the tactics that much. We're going to roll out with more or less what we've been doing and with a few little changes, and hopefully we can make that happen. Like, yeah, I don't know how much it matters or like is realistic to change things in one game. And then also like Burrell's not going to want him to go out and do something completely different, because I'm sure he had some disagreements with the way Josh Wolf did certain things, but overall the game model is what Burrell wants to do. And so I don't think Burrell would be happy with him just throwing everything out the window and completely shaking it up. And I don't know that that's like the best idea for trying to actually win this game. So maybe the shape will be slightly different. Maybe certain players who we're used to seeing in certain spots will be replaced by others. And then the suspensions are going to force his hand a little bit too, and to shake things up. But I would expect it to be fairly similar structurally, or like the game model to be fairly similar to what we've seen. Maybe some pieces or some shapes will be a little different, but the overall game plan, I'd expect it to be the same.
Yeah, and that just, I was thinking about places you would see, you mentioned interviews, places you would see Davy or hear from him, and it does remind me, we have not gotten the Austin FC weekly media availability schedule for this week, and maybe they don't, since it's the last week of the year. We just got Burrell last week, and it might be weird to roll Davy out in the middle of the week, so maybe we won't really hear from him at all this week.
Yeah, I guess we'll get him post-game on Saturday, and by then it's like summer vacation, right?
Yeah, it won't matter. Well, let's talk about, so on Saturday, there's a lot going on in Austin on Saturday. There's F1 race, there's the things leading up to the main F1 race on Sunday. It's an Eminem concert. There's the University of Texas versus Georgia is effectively at the same time. I think it starts at 6:30. So in the grand tradition of college football, it will start before, and there will be like an hour and a half of football left after the Austin FC game ends because they just take that long. There's a bunch of concerts and other related stuff around there. Like, how you feeling about the crowd on Saturday night?
Yeah, I mean, the baseline's going to be low, right? Like the position of the team, the lack of excitement around the team. There's not anything that different. Like we talked about Pochettino being a draw for the national team. Like nobody's coming to this game to see Davy Arnaud at the helm, right? And so I think it'll be a light-ish crowd. Talking about F1, I remember, I think it was in 2022. I think it was the same situation where Austin was playing, UT was playing, and F1 was in town. And the crowd was really good, and there was a lot of F1 people at Q2. The team was really good that year. And so maybe that's not going to be the case. I don't remember who the big draw as far as the concert goes that year was, but I'm sure it was someone quite popular. But like I could see a world in which the F1 race is kind of a boost to this crowd, where people are coming in, like the hardcore racing people are coming in. They're going to go to the racing stuff during the day. They don't care about the concert, and maybe we'll go see a soccer game tonight.
Yeah, I just don't know. It would be interesting to see how much of the overlap is between the UT football season ticket base and Austin season ticket base, because I know in Atlanta, I happened to get the chance to go there a couple years ago, and they said like there's like a 4% overlap between Atlanta United season ticket holders and Atlanta Falcons season ticket holders. They don't really, like, it's a completely different audience. So they don't affect each other as much. I would expect it's probably a bigger overlap here in Austin, but yeah,
it's
I think
also
the biggest factor.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say the biggest factor is like Austin not being very good and not having anything to play for. That's the thing that's gonna like depress the crowd.
Yeah, that's the point I was going to make, is that like if they are all hot tickets, they will all sell well. But when one of them becomes less hot of a ticket, there's plenty of options for entertainment in this city, and people will start to choose other things. And I think that's what we'll see on Saturday, where it's maybe not the worst crowd in Austin's history, but it ain't going to be the best for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's we will definitely get more into this, but we got the off-season schedule for Major League Soccer came out this past week. You want to hit some highlights?
This is the answer. Like whenever I tell someone, okay, I make a soccer podcast, like, what do you do in the off season? And we're about to tell you what we do in the off season. This is why we never run out of stuff to talk about, is because of all the dates we're about to give you. So yeah, run us through the first couple here.
Okay, so we have November 27th, Wednesday, November 27th, the club deadline to exercise options and submit bona fide offers. So this note is from you, I think. This is last year. The last game was October 21st, and the decisions were announced 5 days before the deadline. And we have reason to believe that this may be different this year because of the coaching decision.
Right, yeah. So the timeline was similar as far as like the space between the last game and when the deadline is. It was similar, not exactly the same, but similar. And we got those announcements 5 days before the deadline. I'm guessing Burrell was acting like, okay, we're probably going to push it to the latter end, but we couldn't have pushed it much further than we did last year. And I do think
4 more days, right?
So the bona fide offers deadline and the options deadline were different last year. The options deadline being a few days after, and this year they're on the same day. And so maybe that changes it and pushes up a little, but we're gonna get news about contract options being accepted or declined, and then free agents or whoever else being offered new contracts by the end of November. So not too long from now.
Nope. And then I guess the next big date, I was going to say after that, half-day trade windows on December 9th. Then we get the MLS expansion draft. So San Diego is going to be participating in the expansion draft. That comes on December 11th with a date TBD. Austin will be exposing players as expansion draft, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Because,
there was one that we participated in. One we didn't have to participate in because we had a player taken in the one before, which was Mackenzie Gaines. And then that's the last expansion team we've had. So Austin will be eligible to have a player taken in this expansion draft, which I kind of forgot about expansion draft. And I don't know, I kind of like all the weird MLS stuff, especially in the off season when there's nothing else to talk about. Like, I'm kind of excited to have an expansion draft to cover.
Yeah, and then we get
one question about the expansion draft that I'm sure we'll talk about in depth later, but I'll pose it now and leave it hanging. Should we protect Sebastian Driussi in the expansion draft?
I think it's the most interesting question about the expansion draft. Is like, I would say yes, because I feel like there's still a potential. San Diego feels like a club with ambition. It feels like there's still a potential that that's somebody that could be grabbed, and that's just one of those, like, if it happens, you look so dumb.
underperforming for $6 million? That's the question. Maybe you say like, nobody's going to take him at this price, so let's protect someone else who they might actually take.
I understand a lot of reasoning. That's like I'm very happy to leave Jazzy Zardes available in the expansion draft for that same reason, but it becomes more complicated with Driussi for sure.
Yeah. All right. Sorry. Go ahead. What are the other dates?
No. Free agency opens on the 12th of December. End of year waivers on the 12th. Oh, this reminds me also, we're going to do, I think, a whole show on all these weird roster rules and explanations at some point during the offseason. So like these, we'll just lay the dates out and then like we'll get into depth on what all these mean at a later date. Just because reminds me, on December 13th is the reentry process stage 1, which I remember thinking last year was kind of a nothing thing because nothing ever happened. And then that's where Austin got Hunter Obrion, right?
Yeah,
last
Hunter
season.
Obrion season.
So
yeah,
if we could pull another one of those.
Nothing to come out of that one, but often nothing comes out of that one.
Yeah, and then reentry process stage 2 on the 19th of December, and then the MLS Super Draft on the 20th. And that's sort of the end of player acquisition mechanisms from within the league.
Yeah, so I think we just named a bunch of stuff. The big ones are going to be November 27th, the option exercising or not exercising, and then submitting offers to any people who are out of contract. The expansion draft on December 11th, and then the super draft on December 20th. I think those are the biggest ones. Free agency is also big, but that's not a date. That's like a range, and stuff usually doesn't happen on that date. But the super draft, if you remember last year's super draft, I actually went in and did quite a bit of scouting on the top handful of prospects, only for Austin FC to pick the guy who I said should, like, my number one prospect. Or I don't know if he's number one. He was in the top 2 or 3 that they said they should take. And then they traded him immediately. And so I don't know. We'll see if I can prevent myself from scouting all the top prospects this year, because Austin's going to get a decent pick again, right? But I'm not entirely convinced that Burrell's going to keep the pick and might trade it for money again.
Yeah, he did not seem to value the super draft at all.
Maybe he will once we have
like
a healthier roster too. Like, it's a thing you can afford to take chances on. Like, the allocation money is more important to a team like this, I think. So I would not be shocked to see him trade away his picks again.
No, me either.
I guess that's all. Yeah, like Jeremiah said, sounds like a bunch of mumbo jumbo, but as we get closer to specific dates, we'll go in depth on what they mean, what it means for Austin FC, and what we can expect from these different weird MLS constructs. Anything else? Should we go to our interview with Tony Husband now?
Yeah, let's take a break and then go to that interview.
Yeah, Tony's great. We've had him on a couple of times now. We talk a little bit about the Colorado preview. We also just get into some big picture stuff on what this season has meant for Austin FC, drawing some parallels and maybe some differences between the Gary Smith situation in Nashville, and then also just talking about, like, he's a guy with international experience, living and working in a different country in this sport, and talking to him about what is it. How attractive is a job like Austin FC to an international soccer coach? So, lots in this interview. Hang tight, and we'll be right back with that.
Moon Tower Soccer is brought to you by Sage Wilson Realty. The Sage Wilson team is made up of Austin experts who are client-focused and have over 30 years of combined real estate experience. Our friends at Sage Wilson Realty are giving away 2 tickets to an upcoming match. You can fill out the form in the show notes for your chance to win.
If you or someone you know are in need of Sage real estate advice in Austin, talk to our friends at Sage Wilson Realty. Be sure to check them out online at sagewilson.com.
Moon Tower Soccer's premier sponsor is McGuire Consulting, helping clients in the public affairs space from lobbying at the local, state, and federal levels to digital and communications campaigns across the country.
McGuire Consulting has offices in 10 MLS cities and is proud to support Moon Tower Soccer and support Austin FC's march into the off-season, where hope springs eternal. Contact our friends at McGuire Consulting at mwcllc.com for more information. All right, we're very happy to be joined this week by Apple TV's Tony Husband. Tony, thanks so much for joining us, man.
Really good to be back on with you both as we bring the curtain down, in Austin's case anyway, unfortunately, on the regular season this weekend. But it's nice to see you both and to hear a little bit of what's happening on the ground there as well with all the changes you've had.
Tony, where do you live?
I'm based up in Nashville, but I'm actually talking to you. Yeah, I'm talking to you right now from a hotel in Massachusetts. Actually, my wife and I have taken advantage of the week off to see New England in the fall. We were always told how beautiful it was and what beautiful colours you see up here. So, and it's been a tremendous and very, very nice week. A little cooler in these parts. So looking forward to the warmth, hopefully, of Texas this weekend.
It should be really nice weather down here this weekend, actually. So you're in for a treat.
And a lot going on.
Oh, well. Yeah. It's going to be a really busy weekend.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't do this on purpose. I don't know how into your country music you got in your time in Nashville, but I'm wearing my John Prine shirt today, so representing Nashville unintentionally.
That's very good. Yeah, I tried hard with the country music. I can't tell you I'm a total convert to it, being a bit of a from the generation of kind of Britpop in the 90s. It doesn't really go quite the same way as country, but nevertheless, obviously when you live in Nashville, you get to see some amazing music and some wonderful musicians as well. And I know that probably only rivaled by Austin. So it's always good to get a trip down to Austin as well and see all the entertainment you have on offer.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully, you probably don't get a lot of free time, but maybe you can sneak out and see a show or something.
Go see.
I think we'll talk about this in the preview here, but I think Sting is performing out at the Formula One race on Friday night. You can come in early.
Right. Okay. Well, maybe I need to move my flight forward.
All right. Let's get into our Colorado preview. Last game of the season for both of these teams. Jeremiah, catch us up on what Colorado's been up to.
Yeah, Colorado, they had a really strong start to the season. They're 6th in the West still, hung around the top 3, top 4 for a little while, but they followed back a little bit. And Tony, we believe this is right. They can finish as high as 5th, which I know to be true. I do think they can also finish as low as 8th, depending upon how things happen. So there's a possibility. I think they're on 50 and Portland's on 47. That Portland could pick up a spot on them and make them end up in the playoff game. So Colorado has a little bit to play for. Obviously, more to play for than Austin. Colorado has won the last 2 times they played each other. I like this note. Reggie Cannon, now a Rapid, former star of American players being sold out of the FC Dallas Academy to Europe, which seems to have dried up a little bit after the experience of people like Reggie Cannon, but. Still an interesting team that has something to play for.
Yeah, they are. And I mean, the math is so confusing at this time of year, isn't it? I mean, I spent I did Atlanta's last game 2 weeks ago. And throughout that night, it was about knowing what Atlanta needed to get to stay in the wild card race in the East. But it also mattered what 2 or 3 other teams were doing, and it can get so confusing. So I have it right now as that Colorado will definitely be in the playoffs. They won't have to play the wild card because if Vancouver were to match them on points, they wouldn't match them in the tiebreaker because they've only won 13 games. Colorado won 15. But it has the potential to have a group of teams very, very tight together. I must admit, I still look at Portland in 9th and wonder how they're 9th, because every time I seem to kind of turn one of their games on or do one of their games, I've done quite a few of them this season, they're usually winning and scoring a lot of goals.
Yeah.
And indeed, they've scored 64 goals this season, and yet they find themselves kind of, hanging in there. Well, and ultimately they're in there now, but they have an opportunity themselves to get up to 8th. But again, they wouldn't be able to get above Minnesota because they've won fewer games. So the wild card race will be interesting in the West on that final day. For Colorado, it's interesting because they could go above Houston, and so they find themselves in a kind of situation where they might end up with a Rocky Mountain Cup 3-match series potentially with RSL. If it goes one way, they could find themselves against Seattle, who have been one of the kind of informed teams in the last couple of months. So I think they're going to want the points to finish as high as they possibly can.
Yeah, not only for that first one, but then going forward, like if they're playing a team with a lower seed, having the home field advantage there, they can't get outright home field advantage, but you still take any help you can get going through these spots where you can move up at the table.
You do, and this year again, second year of the 3-game first round series, and I wonder how it will evolve from last year. It was quite interesting to see what certain teams, how they approached it last year. I remember that John Tolkien of the Red Bulls kind of thinking, well, we're 3-0 down in Philadelphia, about 25 minutes into game one, we're thinking about game two. Whereas other people would have been saying, well, yeah, but you've got to go for it because the aggregate score doesn't matter. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what clubs took from year one in that format and into year two. But I don't want to kind of talk too much about the playoffs because I feel like I'm rubbing it into you guys that Austin won't be in them again this year. So my apologies for that. But I hope you'll still be invested and interested in the postseason once it comes around.
We're used to it, Tony. It's okay.
Well, that is true, unfortunately. But you did go. I mean, let's remember that as you reflect on another tough year, obviously, and now a big winter of change, probably. It's still a tremendous achievement what happened in year two to get to that conference final off the back of that amazing season for Jerussi. So I know you probably all feel the time is right for change. But if you remember Josh Wolf for something, it's a tremendous second year if the other ones around it weren't so good.
Yeah, during most of 2021, kind of the catchphrase of our show was, at least we're not FC Cincinnati. And I think maybe we are now, but hopefully, I think what gives us hope is that FC Cincinnati turned their 3 wooden spoons in a row around and had a good year after that, and are one of the best teams in the league now. So we're hoping. I think that's the hope that Austin fans have now.
Just be grateful that, come on, your sympathies to any San Jose Earthquakes fan who has seen 24 defeats in 33 games this year. I mean, that's a failed season brutal. Of epic proportions, and another off season of change, I'm sure, on the way there.
Yeah, we went to. I think we're going to spend a lot of this interview just kind of talking about big picture stuff with Austin, and then maybe some parallels with what you saw in Nashville. But first, let's actually take a moment to preview this game. Looking at what Colorado is good at, what Austin is good at or bad at. Colorado is able to get the ball forward quite quickly and kind of pin teams back in their own defensive half. Austin is prone to giving up goals during that specific thing, like sustained attacks. If like a one-off counterattack, we've brought in the pieces that are not terrible in those moments now. But whenever a team just like has the ball and has the ball and has the ball and has the ball, more times than not, it seems like Austin will give up a goal in those moments. Another stat that I learned from reading Joe Lowry's article on Backheel today was that Colorado lead MLS in penalties won. And then I was like, Austin has to be quite bad in penalties conceded. I looked it up. They are tied for the most penalties conceded in the entire league. So that's another thing to look out for in this match.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. And I have to say, I think I did the Portland game in Austin this season. And indeed, there was a penalty that night, I'm pretty sure. I recall. I think Evander scored.
Chances are Alex Ring or Owen Wolf gave it up.
I think it might have been an Alex Ring penalty concession. I don't know. We'd have to double check. But yes, and I can remember actually in you prepare for these games by watching obviously a lot of your previous games, and I'm pretty sure in preparation for that game, I saw an Austin game in which you gave up a penalty, without a doubt. So, yes, it's funny how these things come around this season. I mean, do you know that now? I don't know as we speak now, but certainly up until quite recently, I don't think Miami had won a penalty this season, a penalty kick. And that's extraordinary when you think about the kind of players they've got and the kind of the dribbling into the penalty area that you would expect to see. And yet at one stage they hadn't won a penalty. Now, whether that's changed in this last 3 or 4 weeks or so, I don't know. But yes, it's curious how these things can happen and come around. But when you look at stylistically these two sides this weekend, quite different. I think, you look at Chris Armas and, his background and the high pressing days and the New York Red Bulls kind of background of coaching philosophy, time spent in Manchester United as well, but with Ralph Rangnick. Stylistically, this is quite two different approaches. But of course, will Austin be much different? I can't imagine they will be too much because this is a one game kind of affair, you would suspect, for Davy Arnaud. But he's had a couple of weeks with most of the squad, if not all of the squad, to work with, and you would hope they'll want to go out with their heads held high. And maybe he's tinkered things just a little bit, just to put a little bit of his stamp on it for one game, even if it is only going to be this one day.
Yeah, I think we'll get into that here in a second. One other thing that potentially Austin could be looking forward to is Zach Steffen. I mean, once considered the best keeper in MLS, high hopes for U.S. national team. That kind of went off the rails. He's come back and he's been mostly he'll have good games, but he's had some games where I've not watched all of their games, but just looking at kind of the stats or ghost stats around it, he's had some really terrible games this year. So maybe that's something Austin can look forward to, or hopefully will come their way as a Zach Steffen stinker.
Well, yeah, who knows? But I did, in researching this game, in some of my preliminary notes, I did note that he did have a pretty good Leagues Cup when it came to we're talking penalties again, penalty shootouts, and he had a pretty good Leagues Cup on that front. So he played a pretty key role in that run that they got, and ultimately third place, which is a great example of where Leagues Cup can be a big thing for teams in this league, and certainly Colorado have reaped the benefits of a deep run in that competition this year. But you referenced Reggie Cannon earlier in the conversation, formerly of Dallas, of course. Someone who went to Europe and struggled to find too much playing time. And Steffen is another example of that. And it's something that's come up with Mauricio Pochettino, obviously, with his arrival now as the US head coach. This issue of lots of players going to Europe, and are they just warming the bench and getting experience? But ultimately, would they be better off playing? I mean, Steffen needed to play games. A goalkeeper has a longer career than most players, but still, he needed to play games. And we've probably seen some of that rust come off on his return to playing in Major League Soccer. But I think I'm pleased to see some of these players that actually look at the domestic league here and think, you know what, this actually is better for my career right now to be playing regularly in this league than perhaps being in Europe, where, okay, there are leagues that are, in better places in terms of possibly the quality. Certainly if you look at the top 3 or 4 leagues. But ultimately, if you look at it and be a little bit selfish, and players have to be selfish, what's best for their careers? And for Zach Steffen, being in MLS, I think was absolutely the right thing to be this year.
Yeah, and I think and hope this is true, that the league is not the same as it was when they left, but meeting them at their level a little bit as well.
Oh, most definitely. I think that the one thing with this league right now, and I see it since I've been involved in it, is the year-on-year improvement and the year-on-year uptick in quality across the league. It's on a much bigger gradient than obviously other leagues, and so it's playing a catch-up, of course. But ultimately, it's happening quite quickly. And, we talk about 2026 coming around the corner all the time. But that is going to be a crucial component of it, is that this league continues to grow up to 26 and then reaps the benefits of a World Cup straight afterwards.
Yeah. Jeremiah, do you want to walk us through the players that Austin's going to be missing for this game?
Yeah, let's talk about some player things, because you touched on that. So Danny Pereira will be out on yellow card accumulation, and then Biro will be out for a red, which leaves Austin pretty thin at fullback. And then I think we can just kind of transition to the fact that this is an interim coach. It's kind of it's like a dead rubber match, right? That doesn't mean a lot. Like, what do we think we're going to see from the Austin players on the side? Like, what's their motivation? And I kind of remember Ethan Finley, I think, answered this question because we've had this chance 3 times in 4 years to answer this question. Answered this question a little bit last year, is especially for the guys that are in an option year. They're trying their best to prove themselves either to the existing team or future suitors, and they're just like, you can't take a game off, and that's what you're going to have to do to prove yourself. So, like, that's one thing I can think of. But like, Tony, what else do you see sort of for Austin fans to look at from their players in this match on Saturday?
Well, it's a really good point about players whose futures are unknown. I think I totted it up just very briefly ahead of coming on tonight. I think 7 players have got deals up but have potential options going forward into next season and beyond. So, there are players playing for their futures. But to be honest with you, in the world of soccer, everybody at this point is playing for their future. Now, we don't know whether the next manager, head coach of Austin FC is watching this game on Sunday, knowing that or Saturday, knowing that they've got this job. We don't know where the process has got to yet with the appointment of a Josh Wolf successor. But there's a fairly good bet, I think, that the next manager is watching this game. and those players know it. And they're
tape,
playing for
the
pride
tape will
as well.
still exist whenever they do get hired anyway.
yeah, that's true. That's true. But I would suspect, and we know that there's been some pretty strong interest. There's going to be strong interest in this job, and it's a very attractive job in Major League Soccer and in soccer in general. So the next manager will be watching, and these players know that they're in the shop window either to have a future in Austin. Maybe not all of them want a future in Austin. They might feel it's time to move on. But that in itself should be a significant factor into them putting on a performance on Saturday. But also, I think you, the supporters, have had to endure another tough year, a year that's fallen short of expectations. And the players will know that they owe these fans a good send-off as well for this year, and something to inspire hope to go into next year, even though you would suspect the starting 11 for Austin at the end of February next year is going to look reasonably different.
Yeah, talking about just like players we might see, I think we talked about this a little bit on last week's show. Like maybe they'll bring up someone like CJ Fodre, who spent most of the season with the second team, and throw someone like him minutes, or maybe we see them go like legacy game and run out Hector Jimenez, Ethan Finley, and just like, okay, one last hurrah for you two. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Looking at just like the situation here in Austin and then the time you spent in Nashville, do you see any parallels or comparisons, either similarities or differences between the situation with Josh Wolf here in Austin and Gary Smith in Nashville?
I think there's a few similarities, but then they kind of diverge quite dramatically, because I think with Austin, it was a kind of one-season wonder, unfortunately, for Josh Wolf in season 2. And it was a great season and a very deep run built off the back of a very nearly MVP season for Driussi, who, of course, ironically, on the subject of Nashville, missed out to Hani Mukhtar.
We were there. We were there that night, Tony. That Hani Mukhtar closed the door on the MVP race, which scored 2 goals in I guess that was a rain delay game in Nashville.
I called that game, and I can remember when he scored the second. It's funny. There's a feeling everybody, I think, felt it. Everybody felt it that when he put that second one in, the cross from the right hand side from Jacques Moore, and I actually said in the commentary. Of course, at the time, this was Nashville SC commentary, club broadcast. But I said, this is the crowning of King Hani. And that was the line, ultimately, that kind of was used when all his MVP videos and things got done at the end of the season, because that just was the moment everybody realised he sealed the deal that night, in that game. But I think Gary Smith's situation at Nashville was more of one of, he'd been there for 7 years, let's not forget, because he'd had a long run with a team in USL as well. It was one of remarkable consistency, playoffs every year. And he actually left the club in Nashville after his 100th victory in all leagues and all competition earlier in the year. I think often with some managers, there is a feeling of perhaps it's just time. And they clearly, the group in Nashville felt it was just time for a change, and they've gone ahead and made the change. And ironically, interestingly, they're the only team that made the change and actually have appointed a permanent head coach. The others went interims and have gone interims more or less through to the end of the season, Greg Berhalter's appointment notwithstanding. But BJ Callahan's come in there. Now, I think Gary Smith had consistency in his record that Josh Wolf ultimately didn't really have. In Austin, it was that one season, one fantastic season. But what you got with Gary Smith was a kind of year-on-year consistently making the playoffs. But I think those who felt there was time for a change saw it was consistently making the playoffs, but it was kind of looking a slightly poorer version of the year before with every year that passed. And these things just sometimes come to a head, and ultimately. Change was called for and change was made. So I wouldn't compare them too much, other than obviously some of the factors and characteristics, like the fact that these were expansion teams. But they've had very different kind of journeys and experiences in this league.
One thing I didn't really plan on asking you, but you said something that made me think of this, is the attractiveness of an MLS head coaching job. You having worked in England, and then probably I'm assuming traveling lots of other places to work in this sport. I'm guessing you have contacts in other places as well. Like people in Austin, most people did not really pay that much attention to MLS before this team came. Give us just like, I guess, some perspective on like how attractive is an MLS job right now to an international soccer coach?
I think it's a very attractive job. It's all about circumstances, of course, and you have to, accept that there'll be some coaches who have that interest and aspiration to see life in a different culture and working in a different part of the world. It's not going to be something that every European coach is ever going to want to do, but I certainly know plenty do, and I do hear that from people who reach out to me from time to time and ask me about the league. I think the one thing also you have to understand with America is you do things so well here. You build great stadiums. You build amazing training grounds. You have the entertainment experience down to a T. I always say to anyone, you go to an MLS game, the match day experience and vibe, particularly in the new markets like Nashville and Austin, it's second to none. It's fantastic. But what's drawing players and coaches is the fact that they see growth. You have the traditions, and of course the very, very high end of the elite leagues of Europe, and some of which you could carry into some of the clubs of South America as well. But what you see here is a country that has a domestic league that is growing very, very fast, and people are curious, and of course also they want to be in work, and they want to be in good work, and they'll see the rewards of that in America can be pretty good as well. So it is a draw, it is an appeal, and it's all highlighted by 2026 as well and what's going on. But also you look at, I think Austin in particular has been such a vibrant team to enter the league. And I think we want to see a good Austin in MLS, because a good Austin FC makes a good MLS season, I think. So there is an appeal there. And a lot of coaches and players who are over I talk more from the European side because that's my area of background. But a lot of people over there look at it and think, I would like to try that. I would be interested in that. And so there'll be no shortage of interest in this job. I mean, it's fascinating to know which way Rodolfo Borrell's going to go, whether it is a familiar name from the kind of MLS world or is it going to be someone perhaps from Europe? It's that's going to be something that'll be very interesting to follow these next few weeks, maybe months. Who knows how quickly the appointment will be made.
Yeah, we will all definitely be paying very close attention to that here. So, Jeremiah, do you have anything else for Tony?
No, I think, we go ahead and wrap this up. I really appreciate you giving us the time, Tony, and that insight. It's always good to talk to you. I think we get to do it like once a year, but we'll talk, so we'll catch you again next year sometime. But enjoy your time in Austin. Yeah,
very much look forward to it. Wish you all the best for the off season, and I think it'll be a pretty exciting off season for Austin. So when we all come back round in February, and I hope I'm doing an Austin game early next season as well. It's going to be a really, really good time for the team, hopefully, and a new era will begin. So let's see if you can sign off with some positivity this weekend ahead of a big off season.
All right. Well, thanks, Tony. We appreciate it. All right. We want to thank Tony Husband one more time. It's a pleasure to talk to him as always. Before we wrap up, we'd like to remind you to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Come find us on the internet at LVRO87 on Twitter, jbentley_ATX on Twitter, and then Moon Tower Soccer on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Thanks so much for listening. We'll be back next week to review the Colorado match and then cover any other Austin FC news that breaks, and then officially transition into the offseason. And we might also have another interview up our sleeves. We're still looking to confirm that, but we might have it. Until then, I'm Landon Cottam.
I'm Jeremiah Bentley.
We'll catch you next time.
When no one is around.
Think for nothing, you never.
La gente. Oh my God.